I'm Don Samulack, President of U.S. Operations at Editage, Cactus Communications, and I'm here in London in the UK at the Digital Science offices within the Macmillan building, talking to Euan, Adie, founder and CEO of Altmetric. And so welcome, and this is another of the vignette series of our discussions. So getting back to the author, why, in your view, why does the author need to pay attention to this and other things in the landscape for their career?
So I think research is a very competitive environment everywhere in the world. And I think researchers shouldn't pass up the chance to highlight aspects of their work, even if it doesn't fit exactly into the kind of box that people are saying you should always go into. You know, if your work does have a good public impact, then you should be able to collect the evidence for that and show it. You should keep talking about it wherever possible.
What behaviorally does an Asian author need to do in order to support their career?
Right.
And so you as a thought leader, if you can put your thinking cap on as to what would you like to say to Asian researchers or any other researchers about where things are changing in the landscape, how behaviorally do they need to change their mode of operation, and things of that nature. One of the things in the author landscape globally is that Western authors may tend to have more of an appreciation of the cutting-edge tools that are out there and the trends in the research community with respect to either big data, metrics, and other things, and they have their own perceptions of what impact factor represents and what altmetric represents within the context of data regarding their research. On the other hand, Asian authors, specifically Chinese authors in particular, may have a disconnect for a lot of cultural reasons and a lot of access reasons. And so I'm just wondering whether you can give a brief overview from your perspective, from Altmetric's perspective, what types of things does a researcher really need to pay attention to in their career in order to advance their career, no matter what stage of the career they're at?
So I think the first thing is definitely to watch how the research landscape is changing and what different funders and society at large expect from researchers. So certainly in the West, here in the UK, it's moved from just producing science for other scientists to producing science that is for other scientists but also has this wider impact. And I think the same thing is going to happen elsewhere in the world as well. And that's good for authors, actually. It is a positive thing. Like at first you might think, well, I don't write science for the general public, why should I care? But it's not really about that. What it is about is, you know, you produce some work, it has a lot of different impacts in different areas, and you should take full advantage of that. That's what these new tools let you do. And even though your work isn't necessarily published in the high impact journal, for example, if you can prove that it did have a big impact on the way things are happening in the real world, or it reached a particular group of people that it was meant to reach, then that sometimes can be useful for funders or the people supporting the research as well. And that's kind of the big shift that's happening and why we're seeing a lot of changes around tools like Altmetric and Figshare and other such.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point about funding, and it's one thing that we haven't touched in the vignettes as to how funders rate the impact of research and what Altmetric's role may be in that, or any role of any data that determines the outcomes of research. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about the funding angle as to why Altmetric may be important for research funding agencies and or institutional research departments to pay attention to.
Yeah. So funding bodies fund research for all sorts of different reasons. And you know, the most basic one is advancing science, but actually in reality there's a lot of other reasons. They want to reach a particular audience, they want to affect policy, they want to change a certain practice, and their kind of overriding mission for these funding grants is to help that happen by supporting individual researchers. So if you as a researcher are undertaking some of this work and you can help the funder accomplish that mission or show that they've accomplished their mission, then that's going to be beneficial to you too. That's what the funder wants to see.